Sono popolazioni che hanno una loro lingua, una loro cultura, una loro tradizione. Per me quello che il popolo indigeno rappresenta è ovviamente un patrimonio di cultura, di saperi ancestrali, di conoscenza profonda dell'ambiente, del territorio, anche dell'universo. Sono dei veri e propri guardiani dell'ambiente, sono coloro che partono dalla conoscenza dell'ambiente, delle sue dinamiche, per arrivare a comprendere il totale rispetto verso l'ambiente, verso la natura, e quindi proprio perché lo conoscono sanno anche come proteggerlo. Sono estremamente orgogliosi delle proprie radici, delle proprie origini, della propria cultura e della loro identità, e lottano da sempre contro ogni forma di colonizzazione dei loro saperi e del loro territorio.
The indigenous people is the first. It's like something like in Canada, the first nation, the first people marginalized, discriminate, and we have local and rural communities. Indigenous people are considered as the slave of the other people here in the earth.
The community that I've been working is a Malay Sambas indigenous people. They live along the river in West Borneo. They really depended on the river and the forest to collect their food, their building materials, their medicines. Before the extractive company came, or extractive industries such as the palm oil plantation, they live really harmonious with the natures. They maintain their land friendly, eco-friendly.
These Mayan indigenous populations work mainly on agriculture. Most of them, because of poverty levels, is subsistence agriculture. And part of their traditional knowledge is knowing when the rain comes and when it doesn't come. So the rainy season here goes from May to October. So it's like 6 months rain, 6 months dry. In June and in August, we have what is called canicula, and it's a dry period within the wet season. So the dry period is usually like 2-3 weeks, and that dry period is what is used by them to crop and know when to replant and such. But with climate change, all that has been lost, because like a couple years ago we had, it was called a mega canicula, because the June canicula, the June dry period, linked with the August one. So you had no rain in between, and then many crops were lost. So indigenous knowledge in that sense, it's difficult now because of the change in patterns. They can't predict anymore.
La conoscenza delle popolazioni indigene è prettamente empirica, quindi è basata sul vissuto di ogni giorno, sull'esperienza vissuta, e quindi è totalmente una conoscenza esperienziale, deduttiva, olistica e anche sacra, e fondamentalmente si trasmette come una tradizione orale.
So for example, like medicinal plants, they usually transfer it from the parents to their daughters. But if you're talking about the skill and building houses, what kind of trees that they need to build houses, every part of it comes from different roots. And then usually the one who knows it more is the man. It's mainly oral. So I think this is where the modern Western science came, because then we will collect this informations and share it with them, because this is only given from really orally. And right now, if this generation, a lot of them doesn't know about this traditional knowledge. So there is a lost information between the old generation and the young generation. For example, if you come to the schools and asking the middle school students, do they know the importance of medicinal plants? They wouldn't know it. I think because when you had like options. There is an option like chemical medicines. It gives you like an instant evac. So people choose to use it rather than using like these medicinal plants or medicinal treatment that takes a long time to taking evac. So people just using it, and then they forget about this traditional knowledge and they don't share it with their son or daughter. So this just lost informations.
I think it all started with colonization because, you know, the Spaniards brought Catholicism in, and it clashed with the Mayan, with the local traditions. And then you have, you know, you fast forward and you have the Civil War, and you decimate the indigenous population, and those that survived had to hide in the mountains. And then they had to start their livelihoods up in the mountains, you know, places where there were steep slopes, that, you know, places that were not inhabited. So then they're living now in places where, you know, there is a high vulnerability because of climate change, because of mudslides, because you are putting crops in a very inclined place and such. But also, I mean, there's still 22, 23 Mayan groups. They all have their own language, but yes, some of it is being lost. But I think in the whole process, you have to think of not just that their culture is lost, but how much of themselves has also been lost, not just through colonization, but also the civil wars. I mean, if you look at right now, the areas that are most impacted by the drug war are indigenous populations.
Here we have 2 seasons. In the 2 seasons, we have the dry season and the rain season. But now, it's not the same. We don't know the beginning of the dry season and the end of it. And we don't know the beginning of the dry season and the end of it because of the climate change, because of the deforestation. In Congo, we are eating caterpillar. It's a good food for us. We have some vegetables into the forest, but by cutting the forest, we are losing vegetables, we are losing mushroom, we are losing some kind of animals, fishes, that's all. And in addition, we have a problem of the water. Our forest is our supermarket, the house of biodiversity. Our forest is our food, our traditional medicine.
Loro dall'ambiente traggono praticamente tutto quello che gli serve alla sopravvivenza, quindi acqua, cibo, vestiti, per alcune popolazioni ovviamente, medicine, energia. E quindi ovviamente loro fanno di tutto pur di proteggere queste risorse naturali dalle quali dipendono, e quindi sono anche disposti ovviamente anche a dare la propria vita per difenderli.
I think because their practice is a form of reciprocal relationship with nature, because they only take what they needed, not what they wanted. I think it's really sustainable because it's limited resources that you take from the nature, and while the nature is recover and reproduce, it ensure the sustainability. And the other thing, I think, because they really depend on the nature for their livelihood, they try to do like practice or doing like a knowledge that ensure that the environment is sustainable so it can support their livelihood. If we talk about riverine fisheries, they're using like fishing traps, where the sizes is the mass size is quite big. So they only harvest fishes that I think the weight is about 300 to up to 1 kilos. The fries won't get into the traps, and they are really thinking about the places where they caught them, so it's really limited their catch.
Bisogna partire dal concetto appunto che la vita dei popoli indigeni è una vita che è basata su un forte senso di interconnessione e interdipendenza con la natura, quindi le loro tradizioni ancestrali sono efficaci proprio perché hanno saputo applicare vari metodi di utilizzo delle risorse naturali attraverso l'osservazione della natura, e quindi hanno saputo adattarsi ai vari cambiamenti in atto. L'hanno fatto poi senza nessuna prevaricazione o distruzione, ma invece hanno ovviamente permesso il mantenimento di un equilibrio tra uomo e ambiente, e quindi si consuma solo ciò che è strettamente necessario alla vita quotidiana, non si sprecano risorse e si ottimizza il tempo, le energie e la materia.
These populations have shown their resilience because they've survived. Despite having, being relocated, being forced to live in smaller pieces of land and land that is more vulnerable, for example.